The following episode of Anchored in Education was previously recorded on Sunday, March 22nd as a live episode. Welcome to Anchored in Education Live, Sunday, March 22nd. I'm E. Scott England, and Anchored in Education is the podcast dedicated to all things education. Educators across the world routinely engage in conversations surrounding fundamentals, concepts, and new ideas that improve this great profession. Sometimes we agree, other times we disagree. But at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education. Hey, so thank you so much for joining us this evening on Anchored in Education, the live edition. It is Sunday, March 22nd. The current time is 6:01 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and I've got on the phone my friend, Dr. Ken Wallace from Maine Township up in northern Illinois. Ken, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm doing okay, Scott. How are you doing?
Man, I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on Anchored in Education, the live show tonight. And man, this has been a crazy time in education.
Nothing like most of us have ever seen. I've been at this a while and, been through, I was a young administrator. When Columbine happened, I was a relatively young administrator when 9/11 happened. And, this is altogether something different. And all of them were very difficult things to navigate through. But this in particular, as you do the math on how long this might stay with us, really, I think it's going to pose some incredible challenges for us. But it also, I think, will create some good opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And that is one of the things, we have seen, we have seen educators step up this week. And not just educators, communities have stepped up. What do you got going on in your district?
Well, it starts with, two of our three high schools, a majority minority high schools. We have a high number of students living in poverty. So from day one, just taking care of the kids, feeding the kids. But it's been amazing to see our community members step up. We're actually doing a fundraiser to provide gift cards for our families. We're figuring that many of them have already begun to lose jobs or lose income. So trying to figure forward here in a few weeks, giving people discretionary ways to, buy household goods, whether it's diapers for a baby or, just things that people need for their household beyond the food that we provide. So, we're leaning into that. We yesterday gave 10,000 pair of gloves and a bunch of masks and gowns to Advocate General, which is here in Park Ridge, one of the really top hospitals in America, that even they are having shortages. So what I am most proud of, and I think it's got to be your community. There's not a community out there that you don't see across the country where people in this country are really stepping up. And my grandfather always told me about World War II. And in his lifetime, he lived through the Great Depression and trained Army platoons in World War II. He talks about that being a time when people banded together in this country like no other time he'd ever seen. And I think that's what it's going to take to get us through this.
Absolutely. And, you talk, that's what's going on in your community, and you're very active on Twitter, Ken, but what have you been amazed about the most that you've seen on these school districts and educators and what they've done this week?
Well, I think, you look at some of the people, like Tony Sanders out there who already, has done really cool things, communicating with his people. There was a really cool tweet or song that was put out by one of the Rolling Meadow singing groups, and it got a lot of attention. The governor even mentioned it today. And across the state, actually, what you're seeing is people who are putting their imagination to work. They're using some of the tools that we've got readily available to us. Ideally, they're using tools that they've already been working with a lot in their schools, and I think that happens more than we realize. And you're just seeing that, it's kind of like Jen Williams, who was one of our keynoters this year at IdeaCon, who really demonstrates that the power of technology is that it does have a way to shrink the world if we use it in the right way. And I think in this moment right now, we're going to find out just how many ways that can really happen.
All right. And, I should tell people, Ken, that the regular programming of Anchored in Education has been interrupted. There are more pressing things going on in districts all across the United States right now. But had the regular programming stayed, you would have been the guest tomorrow. And talking about looking at doing high school the right way, and I want people to listen to that because it's going to be a pretty amazing episode. In fact, I believe we've got some bonus content on that will come out later as well. But let's talk about what your district is doing and some of the innovative ways that you're looking at e-learning or remote learning during this mandatory shutdown.
So we're actually on spring break next week, but we have an agreement with our teachers to go ahead and do education next week. We're kind of, treating this as a sandbox, which we do, for just about everything. We've had daily sessions the past week with our Director of Adult Learning, Judge O'Carra, some of our coaches. And we had been planning really a few weeks ago, just to review, our teachers are pretty tech savvy. We've been doing cloud computing since it was even a thing. We're Google's first K-12 district partner. So that practicing those skills where, learning can be more asynchronous has really helped us. But what we've really tried to attend to is take advantage of the tools we're already using, Google Classroom, tools like Apollo, Pear Deck. A lot of our teachers use Zoom, and Google has just opened up, expanded chats into the Google Meet platform, which we've been using a lot. So just figuring out ways to communicate with kids. We still have, as you know, some unanswered questions about exactly how long we're going to be in this and exactly, what we can do in terms of enrichment and beyond that. So we've actually been triaging and starting with, okay, what do our seniors need to first meet their graduation requirements? But as you know, all of our kids have career plans, so our counselors and our career coordinators are really reaching out to them to make sure that we can complete everything that we can. A lot of our kids were actually in the middle of internships, so obviously, like a lot of folks in the country, a lot of those face-to-face things have had to be shut down. But we're doing as much as we can, as well as we can, and still, looking for guidance. And, it starts with first just taking care of the kids. But I've loved our teachers have all reached out to their kids, begun working this past week, and then we will try to run some semblance of school beginning next week. We're actually going to take advantage of the block portion of our hybrid schedule, and we'll be running block days here moving forward. We'll use Friday as an office hour day to just make sure we do as much catch up as we can for kids.
All right, and that is most important. It's about the kids, and that's one of the things. The education, it's a priority. But I told my staff this past Friday and over the weekend that education priority. But you know what? Our food program, making sure that our other basic needs are being met. That is most important. Ken, before I let you go, I've got to ask, because you talked about this is kind of we're sandboxing this here, and but it's an emotional time for teachers and students. So have you heard from your staff and kind of how they're feeling and what they're thinking?
I have. I communicate either through video or email directly to staff every day. And so a lot of them have reached out. One of our awesome teacher leaders, Jenny Gustafson, who does some of our academic literacy coaching for us, shared a tweet yesterday where in the city of Chicago, they're trying to channel Italy, and I think at 7 p.m. everyone's going to sing "Living on a Prayer" throughout the city. So it's been kind of cool and also humbling. And also a little bit scary. I know that a lot of folks have shared, the thing that sheltering in place has a risk for all of us is to just make people isolated, probably bring on depression and anxiety and a lot of other things. And that's where, I think this staying connected is so important for our teachers. We're reaching out first, obviously, to our kids, but we're also trying to encourage our staff to reach out to each other, to make a connection every day, to make connections with kids, to make connections with each other. And I think, we don't have to overthink this, but that human connection, even if it's picking up the phone, even if it's getting on a chat or a hangout, and just, hey, how you doing? And here's another really cool thing. I've had a lot of superintendent friends who have reached out the last few days, people like Andy DeRoss, John Bertel, folks that have just reached out and said, hey, how are you doing? And I've been trying to do that as well for folks, just to say, hey, how are people doing? And I've encouraged everybody to do that. That one little small thing where it takes 2 or 3 people you haven't heard from for a while every day, and just reach out and ask people how they're doing. And I think that's the kind of thing that it's going to take to get through this, that we stay connected with each other, especially since we're not going to have as much contact with each other.
Yes, absolutely. So, Ken, thank you for calling and joining Anchored in Education Live. We're talking to Ken Wallace, and at Ken Wallace 207, and you can find on Twitter. Ken, have a great night. Stay in touch.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
All right. Goodbye. All right. So I am your host, E. Scott England. This is Anchored in Education Live. And look, I come to you tonight inspired, impressed, and you know what? All around just grateful to be in education at this time. And, you think, why? Because, we've been thrown a curveball. We've been, thrown an audible. Why now are you grateful to be in education? It's because nationwide right now, state governments have turned to educators, giving really seemingly little notice, and said, you know what, your schools can't be open, but we want your students to keep learning. Go. And schools have done just that. Anchored in Education Live wants to talk to educators tonight. It is 6:12 Central Time, and we've got a little bit of time, so give us a call. What has touched you this week? What innovation are maybe you doing or your district's doing? Do you have a great resource that we could all benefit from? Who should we be following? Because there's a lot of good things. We just talked to our friend Ken Wallace from up in Northern Illinois at Ken Wallace 207, and his district's doing some amazing things. But this is the time right now where we need to link arms, join forces, pull in the same direction. The phone line is open, 217-855-3490. I do want to remind you, there is just one phone line. This is kind of just thrown together a little bit on a whim. About 24 hours ago, I went to my wife, as I typically do, and said, I've got a crazy idea, but I'm going to do it, and I've got less than a day to put it together. But you know what? Here we are. So, let me talk. While we wait on somebody to call in here, let me talk a little bit about our experience in Illinois. Friday, March 13th, the buzz around Illinois was that something at the state level was going to be coming down, that we're going to be doing something to help flatten the curve on the COVID-19 outbreak. And so, we waited with bated breath, I guess you could say, throughout the day. I talked to some key people in the district and said, I think this may be coming. Let's just be ready. And then at 3:30, with hundreds of other superintendents in Illinois, I got on a teleconference with the governor. And at 3:35, Governor J.B. Pritzker announced that schools would be mandated to be closed. And we've got a caller here. Hello, you're on Anchored in Education Live.
A group of people representing maintenance and bus drivers.
Maintenance and bus drivers. And I believe I'm talking to Kevin Landris right now.
That's correct.
Maintenance and bus drivers. Let's start talking with the maintenance first, because, that's one thing that you still have essential personnel. And one of the big things right now, I suppose, is a focus on cleaning buildings. What's been going on in your district?
Well, we had teachers were in on Monday, and they basically had Monday to gather their things and prepare for potential e-learning. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we basically took the time and the effort to clean and disinfect all 3 buildings on our campus.
All right. And so now moving forward, What's the plan? Because you're in Illinois as well, and we know that at least through the 7th we're out. So what's going on between now and that time?
We're going to take advantage of the downtime. We're still an essential function and an essential role. We will still have people in and out of the building. So obviously we have a responsibility to keep the building clean and functional. And then we're going to take advantage of the downtime and start working towards getting some summer stuff done.
All right. And how about with transportation? Do you have food delivery at your district?
We do. We set up activity buses, bus routes with activity buses. So
Okay.
basically, we're not limited on who can drive the vehicle. But Monday through Friday, we have locations throughout the in-town area where the bus will set with lunches on board, and students can walk to those locations. The bus is at each one of those locations for approximately 20 minutes. And then, so we're doing that 5 days a week. And then on Friday, we delivered almost 2,400 meals.
Wow.
For our rural bus riders. Basically, they had an opportunity. I had bus drivers actually call parents, encourage them to participate. And then so we built our bus routes based on those that wanted to participate. And so then Friday morning, we delayed our bus routes by about 2 hours. And then delivered, like I said, almost 2,400 meals, 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches for each one of those kids that wanted to participate. We plan on doing that same thing this week, same process as last week, and then we'll figure out what the following week holds, where we may do something slightly different. But that's where we're at now.
That's still pretty impressive numbers that you've all put on here. So let me talk to you about. So I know your history. I guess I should say that Kevin Landris is also my father-in-law and maintenance and transportation director at Sullivan. But you had almost 30 years in retail. And so what we're seeing is a lot of stores that have now shut down, or if they're not essential. What does that mean for retail? I mean, have you ever seen anything like this in your past?
I have not. I can't begin to think what those people would be going through at the moment. Obviously, their livelihood is dependent on those customers being able to walk in and open a door and, get whatever the case may be, whatever they're after, whether it was a washer dryer or a big screen TV or a set of tools. But it's hard to imagine what those people are going through, and obviously, pretty devastating to not be able to function.
Yeah. How odd is it to have a school empty in the middle of March?
Pretty odd. We always joke that we get a lot more done with kids not around, but obviously it was pretty eerie last week, to not have them around. I will tell you though, Friday was an absolute joy. I had to drive a route on Friday. One of the drivers was not able to drive at the time that we decided to deliver meals, and I delivered on my particular route 310 meals.
Wow.
And with the exception of one stop, every kid met us at the door of the bus, and they were excited to see us, smiling from ear to ear, and probably glad to get out of the house, right? But
Right.
It was a good thing. It was one of those great moments. Glad to be a part of it. Unfortunate circumstances, but certainly I know a lot of those kids depend on, meals at school, breakfast and lunch. And certainly now is our time. We're a support staff function, but certainly we play a vital role depending on how long this thing plays out. So glad to be a part of it.
Well, we're glad that you're a part of it as well. And thanks for calling Anchored in Education Live today.
Thank you,
Yep.
Dr. Engler.
Bye-bye. All right. So if you want to call and join the conversation, let's talk. What's going on right now? We are in, we keep saying unprecedented time in education, and I would have to agree. I've said it quite a bit myself. So I was telling you the story about Illinois, and whenever J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, announced at 3:35 on Friday, March 13th, that schools would be mandated to close beginning the following week on March 17th and lasting through March 30th. Of course, now The closure has been extended in Illinois through April 7th. So the anticipated return date right now is April 8th. But after that announcement, over the course of the next 6 hours, we began mapping out our plan. And, the plan was altered every time new guidance was issued over the weekend. But we weren't alone. By the time Illinois had received that mandate, I believe that Ohio, Michigan, and Maryland has already closed. Kentucky was right on their heels with not necessarily a mandated closure at that time, but strongly encouraged all districts to shut down. And then, the rest of the states have followed suit. So I looked at an updated map, and one state, Kansas, has closed schools for the rest of the academic year. 4 states have some districts that are either closed or are scheduled to close, and the other 45 states are entirely shut down. When you hear unprecedented times, those numbers right there tell the story. The phone line is open. Join the conversation on Anchored in Education Live today. You can also tweet us, hashtag Anchored Live. You can also email podcast@escottengland.com to get in your questions. And let's see who we've got here. Hello, you are on Anchored in Education Live.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. Is this Dr. Kyle Thompson?
It sure is, buddy. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. So, Dr. Thompson, you are the regional superintendent for ROE 11. And for those outside of Illinois, ROE is Regional Office of Education. And you have how many counties in your region?
7 counties.
7 counties. And do you have how many districts?
25.
25 districts. So tell us a little bit about what's been going on throughout these counties and districts over the last week.
Well, it's been, the response has been incredible. And just like you were referencing before I called in, a week ago Friday, we were all wondering what was going to be next for us because we'd seen, higher ed cancel and college and professional sports and, a lot of other luxuries we often take for granted get canceled. And we kind of knew we were going to be next and started preparing accordingly. But once the announcement was made, just seeing everyone kick it up another notch across the region, all the superintendents that were planning and working late into the evening last weekend and throughout the weekend, constant phone calls and emails and text messages and communication, and just really it brought everyone together to try to navigate this uncharted territory we've never been in. And I think they've navigated successfully so far.
I think that we have seen some very impressive things, and it is uncharted territory. I've talked to many educators, some that are retiring, some who have retired. And so, you're looking at going back many, many years, and teachers have referenced, the Challenger and the Ken Wallace, he referenced 9/11. There's been some big things, but we've never seen anything like this. And so what are some of the innovative things that you've seen districts or people doing over this week?
Yeah, you're right. We'll never forget it. And one of my favorite parts of the week has been watching, whether it's through social media or local newspapers, watching how every district is still trying to meet the needs of their students. And again, the innovation you talked about, just even putting together meals. So many of our districts provide 2 meals a day to so many students. And just watching that plan come together and then watching them enact that plan last week about how, whether, some bus drivers were going on bus routes and you had support staff delivering meals up to the doorstep, or you had drive-through locations at every school in a district. Just how everyone was getting as creative as possible and being as flexible as possible and going above and beyond to make sure that our students' basic needs were met was inspiring.
That's the most important. So we talk about the uncharted territory that we have crossed so far, but looking ahead, for many of us throughout this country, what lies ahead is still questionable. So,
Sure.
how are you helping? I guess your schools in your area kind of deal with this unknown, because that's one of the biggest things I'm hearing is, the unknown has me anxious or stressed.
I think just constant communication. So many questions are coming in, and sometimes they're, questions that I can have an answer to instantly, and sometimes they're questions that take a little bit of research. But just using a professional network and really communication from the state level has been good. Communication from the organizations like IASA and IPA. And the IRSS from all the statewide associations has been good. So the flood of emails in this kind of situation, I don't believe you can over communicate. And so I think just if we continue to do that and continue to ask people, how can I help you? What do you need? Is there anything I can do for you today? So many people, as Ken Wallace referenced, are doing that. It's makes us all really realize that we're all in this together.
Absolutely. That we're all in this together. Reminds me of something that I hear frequently from our friend up north. Joe Sanfilippo tells us all the time, we're all in this together. And I feel like listening to Joe has kind of prepared us for this, and that all of a sudden, we've had the conversation of saying, I'm just a bus driver, I'm just a janitor, and Joe would just flip out on that no, right. You're more than that. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it now.
Yeah, it's more about, and now we realize it's more about life, not just education. It's just the grand scheme, the big picture, and just something like this. Again, it's never happened. It's it's on a great scale, and we don't know what's to come. Even you're right. I mean, we don't know what the next week holds, the next month. And this past week, we didn't know what the next hour held. We were all waiting every day for an announcement or the latest guidance to come out from ISB. And just like I said, everyone, I just feel like has done an incredible job handling this so far. And it's been good to see, and hopefully we can continue to rally around each other and stick together. As we're, we don't even know, maybe we're right in the middle of this.
You're absolutely right. Kyle, thanks for calling, and we'll keep doing the great things you're doing.
Okay, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Talk to you. Hello. You're on Anchored in Education Live.
Scott, this is John Bartelt. How are you doing today?
Dr. John Bartelt, I am doing wonderful. How are you, my friend?
I am wonderful.
Well, we appreciate you calling. You are on Anchored in Education Live, and you are a past guest of the Anchored in Education podcast talking about educator self-care. And let me tell you, this is probably the time we need to be most aware of taking care of ourselves. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. For those of you teaching, for those of you leading, you have to you got to step away from some of this as much as we can with a stay-at-home order, and do activities that bring you joy. That could be playing a game with your family. That could be streaming a movie together. It could be a variety of different things, but we have to step away from devices every now and then. I realize that we are all trying to provide some form of learning to our students in this state, and you're doing a fabulous job at doing that, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's tough work, and we've had to do it on less than decent notice. And I think that I appreciate, and if there are parents out there that are listening to this, I appreciate you for what you're doing and the burden that you've picked up in the interim. But I think that's important that you take some quiet time, some time where you can focus on yourself. You got to remember to eat well and eat right. You have to remember to get a little exercise, at least 30 minutes. And really, you need to be good to yourself in the sense of thinking of positive things or doing things that bring you a positive return.
Yes.
Because if we don't do that, we're not modeling what we should for everyone around us. And so in Parks and I think it's Parks and Recreation, one of the characters talked about treating themselves, or treat yourself.
Yes.
And I think that ultimately that message needs to be trumpeted from the tops of our roofs, since we can't trumpet it in any other way unless we use electronic means to do so. But I will say that ultimately, Scott, we during this crisis, we have to take really good care of ourselves and check in on those around us, because I think one of the things that we tend to forget about is, when we're not directly close by the people that we've been around when in our work environments, we tend not to think about what they may be dealing with in their personal lives. Just do a little quick drop in and see how they're doing. It could be in the form of an email. It could be in the form of a direct message on social media. Just find out how they're doing. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them what you can do for them. And by doing that, I think what you're doing is you're building capacity, not only with yourself, but in the hearts of others when they look at you as a caring individual looking out for them. And I think of all the times that we need people to care about each other, this would be that time.
Absolutely. And like you said, you have to step away from the devices. We can easily get sucked in. If we want a COVID-19 update, there's one coming every 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get, you're engrossed with it. And the next thing you know, you're planning one more thing, and you're at the office, making sure that this is crossed. And, you've got to make sure if you wear yourself down, you're not going to be any good to anybody.
Exactly.
John, I appreciate you calling in.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, you have a good day. Take care.
You too. Good luck, everybody.
All right. That was our friend John Bartelt. And you can follow him at John Bartelt on Twitter. And I tell you what, if you have not listened to that episode of Educator Self-Care, you want to go back and you'll want to check that out. And our previous guest, Dr. Kyle Thompson, he was also a previous Anchored in Education guest. You can follow him at Kyle Thompson 643, and you can go back and hear one of his earlier episodes in which we talked about the teacher shortage. We have a comment on the chat here, and so it says, what do you anticipate for e-learning plans moving forward? Meaning that these plans were simply for snow days, emergency days, etc. So we are an elementary district, and my primary teachers are very concerned with e-learning. 3 through 8 seems to be running with it, but those little ones in K2, anyone else experiencing this? And that is a great question, because I think that you will hear many that talk about e-learning plans that, the e-learning, the e-days, good. It's great to have, but I don't believe that they were designed to be sustainable. And so that is kind of what we're talking about, in that, some of these districts, we just mentioned a little bit ago, Kansas, done for the year. They're having to shift into something that is more than e-learning. And, here in Illinois, they're calling it remote instruction. And it's not necessarily all the way done. They've got an advisory group put together. But, let's talk e-learning. If anybody wants to talk about what to do K2 if you're in a district that closes down, how are we providing instruction to those little ones? So the Illinois State Board of Education is calling it remote instruction, and I think that we will find, and we'll get to that in just a second. We're going to take a call here. Hello, you're on Anchored in Education Live.
Hello, this is Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm not bad at all.
Hey, that is awesome. What is your role in education, Jeremy?
I am an high school English teacher, so I'm not chiming in on the K2 thing.
Okay.
But I'm a high school teacher, and one of the things with e-learning in my district, I'm actually in Kyle Thompson's, Dr. Kyle Thompson's district, or his area. And one of the things that we're finding with e-learning in my district particular is only about 50% of our students have internet access or can get internet access due to our area. So a big digital divide, so to speak, I guess.
And that is, I think, on, when we talk remote instruction, that I think we'll find that people are divided, and that there are challenges. And every state has the rural areas that you're talking about that somehow still lack the reliable internet. So has your district began having the conversations on what to do for the ones without either devices or reliable internet?
Right now, we're kind of in the early stages of that.
Yeah.
I think the whole education system is kind of in shock still over, having to, we've had about a week. I mean, tomorrow will be the week announcement here in Illinois. I think that some of it is still a shock thing. Like, okay, we've got to respond, but we're still trying to adapt and to figure out the best plan of action.
Absolutely. What this past week you had e-learning going on for your class for high school English, is that right?
Yeah, we basically I'm very active with technology, so I had a Google Classroom set up previous to this, so the students have been exposed to Google Classroom already, but it's just a matter of only getting about 50, probably not even 50% participation at this point. But I've been trying to reach out and touch base with all my students that I can at this point. But we've got a plan that I think will, again, I hate to pack at kids to death, but you want to keep them stimulated in some way.
Right.
So the ones that don't necessarily have the internet access have to have something for those other students as well.
So you mentioned the students. Let's talk for just a second about the students. What has kind of been the conversations you've had with them this week on, what are they feeling? Because, we had talked about how important it is that we meet the needs. What are they experiencing in this shutdown?
I really think that I don't know who coined this term or this phrase, Maslow before Bloom.
Yeah.
I think that idea and that concept is probably more important at this point in the game of just being out a week. Again, they're adjusting to a whole new schedule, being at home, not knowing what home lives are like, and just being thrown into this whole dynamic as our teachers. But the conversations I've had seem to be positive. They're still, we want them to practice social distancing, but still, they're still trying to get together with a couple friends and that kind of thing, which is very important as well. But yet we want to get this thing stopped too.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely, but just like we heard with John Bartell, if it's picking up the phone, if it's video chatting, it's important to stay in touch. Jeremy from Effingham, thank you so much for calling into Anchored in Education Live.
Yep, have a good evening.
Hey, you too, thank you. And we're still looking for somebody that wants to kind of tackle what's the plan with if we go all digital on our learning for the rest of the year. We've got to reach K through 12, and it seems like from third grade on up, a lot of them we've got it figured out. But we've got some primary teachers out there with some questions and looking for some resources and everything else. So we often hear the phrase when someone did something, let's say extraordinary, they say they really stepped up or they stepped up to the plate. Well, in my opinion, and I think really everybody's educators have stepped up. And so I want to pause for a second and I want to define how I am using educators here. So if you are a teacher, an aide, a parapro, a bus driver, an administrative assistant, a cook, you're in maintenance, you're an administrator, do you get the picture? If you are involved in the educational process, you are important, you matter, and you have really stepped up during this time that we've never seen, unprecedented. We've heard it a lot, and I'm going to continue to use it because that's the kind of time we are in right now. We've got many listeners out there that are wanting to hear what you've got to say, and more importantly, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to know there's a lot of innovation going on right now, and they've really just stepped up. We've got a call. Let's take this here. Hello, you're on Anchored in Education Live.
Hey, Scott, it's Nick Poliak.
Hey, Dr. Nick Poliak from Leyden High. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, well, I'm doing something new. I'm stepping outside the box, and I'm having fun talking to educators. So seems like it's a good time to kind of just stop and let's just see how everybody's doing. Let's see what everybody's got going on last week and this week. So tell us a little bit about what last week was for you.
Last week was strange. I went to work every day in a big empty building, but my food service ladies and my transportation workers were the heroes. They fed about 10,000 meals over the course of last week. And it was pretty amazing to see. And our teachers are doing amazing work from home, just reinventing their work. Thinking outside the box, being creative, trying new things. Couldn't be more proud of our folks.
Absolutely. And so, just a little background on your district. So your district was 1-to-1 with technology pretty early on. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been 1-to-1 with Chromebooks since 2012.
Okay. And in Illinois, we have e-learning, but it was piloted by 3 districts before they made it kind of a statewide thing. And your district was one of those 3.
Yeah, Leiden High Schools, West Chicago High School, and Gurnee Elementary have been doing e-learning basically for snow days or wind chill since for the last 5 years.
Okay, so and knowing that though that it was e-learning in Illinois at least was created for the emergency days, like you said, for when we've got the wind chill, because up north it gets pretty cold and you get a lot of snow. But I don't know whenever they put it together that it was for a pandemic. And so does that cause, kind of concerns or going back to the drawing board to make sure everything's set up for a longer period of time?
Yeah, I mean, what we've been doing certainly wasn't designed to be used for extended periods of time like this. So our teachers had maybe a leg up in that they've been doing this on a limited basis, but they're now having to figure out how to do it on a daily basis for a long time. So this is for sure a different experience.
Absolutely. Now, you are in a high school district, and we had a question posed to us a little bit ago, but it was more for elementary, and so you may not be able to answer it, but do you have any good resources for these elementary teachers for like the K-1-2 that's concerned about extended e-learning and how best to reach their students?
My advice is to reach out to my good friend, Colleen Packett, who's the superintendent at Gurnee Elementary.
Okay.
They were part of the pilot, and they've been leading the way in terms of helping districts across the state figure out e-learning for the pre-K-8 population. So not my wheelhouse for sure, but if you reach out to Colleen, they're just doing great work. On their website, you can find resources and things about their plan. So check out Gurnee Elementary.
All right, we'll definitely do this. And as we move forward, before you go, I mean, what can you tell educators out there that they're saying that their biggest apprehension is just the unknown?
Yeah, I think whether you're a teacher or an administrator, just support one another. This is different. This is new for everybody. It's new for the students. It's new for the parents. It's new for the teachers and the administrators. And so we're going to figure it out together. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be exactly what we can do. And together, we can make this be really meaningful for our kids.
Absolutely. Nick Poliak, thank you so much for joining us on Anchored in Education Live.
Thanks. Great to talk to you. Thanks for stepping out and trying something new. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you. All right. That was Nick Poliak from Leiden High School District up in Northern Illinois. And I tell you what, Nick is a great resource on e-learning. Like we talked about, he's a high school district, but just when it comes to technology, he's got an amazing staff that is just there. I mean, they're so willing to help out. So you may want to check him out. Give him a follow on Twitter at @InPoliak. We heard from our friend Jeremy in Effingham. He's on Twitter. You can follow him at RINKEL. Jeremy, I don't want to mess up your last name, Jeremy, but it's at RINKEL Jeremy. And you can go in, follow us on hashtag Anchored in Education or hashtag Anchored Live. And, just call in right now or join the conversation. let's talk about what's going on in your classroom, your school, your district. This is a time that none of us have seen, but we're fortunate enough that we're all going through it together. And there's something about educators. When there is a time in need, we step up and we help each other out. And I really don't think that anybody right now is looking at this as it's a competition. Who can put out the best e-learning? Who can put out the best remote instruction? Who can have the most deliveries on an emergency food program? That's not what we're doing. We got to do what's best for our community, for our district, and it's going to look different, and that's okay. But you may see something that's going on, and you may want to do a little bit more research to see, is that something that would work for your class? Is that something that would work for your school? Reach out. Let's connect. Let's connect on Twitter. Let's, Twitter already, at least for me on my feed, is blowing up with amazing things educators are doing. And, let's share it. Let's connect. Let's, and let's not wait for a pandemic to bring us all together like this. Let's keep this going. And, call in right now. Anchored in Education Live. It's now, I think it's a viral Facebook post, but school board member Ken Buck wrote about educators last week, and he had a quote, educators Apollo 13 the problem, end quote. And he ended the post with saying, quote, get out of the way of a teacher and watch with amazement at what really happens. This is so true. It takes amazing people to do amazing things, and we have seen that. But don't just think that educators are sitting at home enjoying time off. And I haven't seen anybody accusing anyone of that, but this is taking an emotional toll on many. So I want, just listen to what one teacher had to say. I think the person says, I think the hardest part is looking to the future and having so many unanswered questions. Will I see my students again this school year? Will my children miss out on the last quarter of school? Another person writes, the COVID-19 pandemic has deeply impacted me on an emotional level. As stressful as working with children can be at times, I love my job. I enjoy interacting with them on a daily basis. I teared up on Monday when they lined up to go home, not knowing when we would see them again. I woke up early on Tuesday with a particular student on my mind. I know that I am a daily source of comfort to her, and now that has been abruptly taken away. I worry about her. I worry about several of the students and what their days at home will be like. Will they be nurtured and cared for? I think of how many hugs I see children getting from our staff every day and wonder if that void will be filled at home. My family will be fine, but I worry that this is not the case with some of our students. And again, this makes me sad. What do you think about when you reflect back on this past week? Or what do you think, looking forward? Our minds are reeling. I know mine is, and I know that the many others I talk to are as well. They do not teach you this in teacher school. But you know what? Your mind doesn't shut off when you go home for the day. I love seeing so many people jumping at the chance to volunteer for food giveaways. They're jumping in on Twitter. We're lifting people up. We're shouting out names and programs and everything else. Communities are coming together. I've seen some really amazing videos it's coming out of different communities and what they're doing to still make sure that, kids know that they're cared for. I can tell you that we organized our food program last weekend, and we have 2 pickup locations in our small town, so I sent out a sign-up sheet to find volunteers to assist with food distribution, and within minutes, every slot was filled. So same thing this weekend, we pulled together and we decided that we needed to add delivery moving forward because we know that this is going to go in Illinois. until the 7th, but it could go longer. So we added the option of delivery. So I put out a sign-up sheet, same thing. Within the hour, it was filled up. So what has amazed you during this past week? There is a chat feature on, if you're listening right now, we've got the one question we put out there on the teachers of those K2. What are you doing for e-learning? What are you doing for remote instruction? Nick Poliak called in, gave a great resource, Gurney Elementary School in Gurney, Illinois. He said, check out that website, that there's some great things going on in that school. And, but what else? What else is going on right now? Give us a call. Haven't been doing this ever, and thought, you know what, we'll give it a shot. It's time to go live. We need to add maybe one more resource that we can hear, pick up something. Anchored in Education live show. This is not typical. And, it's fun. I would love to do more. I'm going to remind you right now, though, that you can subscribe to Anchored in Education, the podcast, on whatever platform you get your podcast. And so every Monday we have new episodes, and, we often have amazing guests as well. Nick Poliak, John Bartelt, Ken Wallace, Dr. Kyle Thompson, they've all been guests, and I am looking for guests. So if you want to be one, reach out and let's put an episode together. And don't be too humble. Don't say, well, they're all doing great things, and I don't have that great. Trust me, you've got great things going on in your classroom, in your school. You need to get on. You need to get on the Anchored in Education podcast, and we need to get it shared out. So our topics are endless, and if you can even remotely tie it to education, we're going to talk about it. And, we don't just talk to practicing educators. We often step outside our profession to connect with those doing amazing things that we believe we could implement in our districts or schools or classrooms. Because like we say, hey, we are all anchored in education. The phone line is open a few more minutes. I tried to get one of my kids to join me on Anchored in Education Live to talk about what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, because they are working diligently every night on their work that they have, and it's been delivered to them various ways, and it's been great to see how this has come together for e-learning. So, but I could not get them on. So, hey, here's another comment, and this is a great one too. I echo this. There has been the lack of complaining, so much positivity from all stakeholders, and very, very, very minimal negative feedback. Everybody, I think everyone has really stepped up, and it's just amazing to see. Brooke, thank you for that comment. And I was actually thinking that the other day, just as I was looking on, just on different social media feeds and talking to people throughout different communities, that, it's strange, especially if you're in a community, such as mine, and that right now we have no documented cases of COVID-19. And so for some, it's difficult to understand why are we going through all this, but then whenever we talk, it's all positive. I understand why we're doing this, and I think it's great what the schools are doing. It truly is amazing how well. We'll go back to what Ken Buck said. We Apollo 13 this, and we've put it together, and there has been, I'm sure, ample opportunities for people to maybe poke holes in plans that we've put together, or try to criticize, and but they haven't, because they understand that we are in uncharted territory, and it's amazing to see how we're all coming together, and I hope that continues. And you know what? When the pandemic is over, I hope that it continues too, because believe it or not, us in education, we do amazing things all the time. And so I just got an email that came in and from Julie Adams, and looks like maybe we missed her call. We will definitely get her back on. Julie Adams, we split her episode into two. The hashtag Fully Charged Part 1, Part 2 was at the very beginning of this year. And, it's actually a perfect time to talk about that, because we talk about in her book Maslow and Bloom and strategies to make sure that needs are being met, not just for students, but for parents, for teachers. And you know what? That's something that's kind of what John Bartelt was getting at whenever he called in. But it's so true that everybody right now is experiencing this, not just the teachers, but the students, the parents. And it's time to make sure that everybody is being taken care of. So Anchored in Education Live, first time doing this, would love to do it again. The phone line, we're going to keep it open just a little bit longer, see if anybody else wants to call in. We've talked to some amazing educators. There will be an archive of this. And I actually think that what we'll do, because we are kind of, we're altering the regular programming of Anchored in Education during this time. And part of it is due to everybody being busy, and that is myself included. But I just thought maybe there were other ways that we could reach out, connect, and talk. And, we've got some great topics coming up, but let's talk about something that is more relevant. And, so Ken Wallace will be a future episode. We're going to talk to Joe Fothery, and on teacher leadership, we're going to talk to Charlie Cass. Charlie Cass, a two-time Anchored in Education guest, going to come back and join us again a little bit later. I've got the state superintendent from Oklahoma. We actually had our interview scheduled, and because of everything going on, it has been postponed. But we plan on getting Joy back on here and talking a little bit, because we are, though we're out of Illinois, we want to talk to everybody. This has just been really fun. We've been on for an hour. It is now 7 o'clock Central Time, and probably about time to sign off. It's, most of us do not have school tomorrow, but it does not mean that we won't be up. We'll be connecting with our students or our staff, and even if you did not have plans to connect with somebody, you could still send out a message and just saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" I've had a couple of those messages sent to me, and let me tell you, it is amazing. And you know what? You have to remember that at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education. Reach out anytime. Tweet to me at eScottEngland. Use hashtag Anchored in Education, hashtag Anchored Live. Email podcast at eScottEngland.com. And, just check in. See how you're going. Let's plan something. And, hey, let's do this again.